applications in our inferential statistics is to estimate a population parameter based on information that we get when we gather a random sample and use our sample statistics. In this video, we're going to look at forming a confidence interval for a population mean. So here we have a random sample of adult women was taken and their heights were measured in inches. So we have the data, 64.2 inches, 60.8 inches, 64.4 inches, etc. Typically we would probably take many more in our sample than this, but as an example of the process, I've just done these 10 numbers. Now the question says to find an 85% confidence interval for the population mean height of women. When we want to estimate a population parameter from samples that we take, with both the population mean estimation and later with a population proportion estimation, we first get a point estimate, and then from that point estimate we take our margin of error and we subtract the margin of error to get the low end of the confidence interval and add the margin of error to get the high end of the confidence interval. So when we're doing a confidence interval for the population mean, the point estimate is in the middle of the interval, and then we subtract and add to get our interval of values, and then we state what percent we did that confidence interval for. Now the point estimate for the population mean is the sample mean. So if we ever have where we're asking for the point estimate for the population mean, it is the sample mean. Now to get this and then ultimately to get our confidence interval, the first thing, if you're going to use a TI-83 or a TI-84 calculator to do this, is you want to enter the data into your calculator. Now I suggest that once I kind of describe how to do this, you pause the video and then you enter the data into your calculator so that you can see that you're getting the same numbers as I am getting in the video. So the first thing you want to do to enter the data is you want to push the Stat button, and in the Stat button you're going to have a menu of options, and the very first one is Edit. And your highlighting should be on Edit when you first go to that. So in the Edit, once you see that, you're going to have lists. If there's anything in your list, you want to cursor up so you're highlighting on the name of the list, and we're going to do this for list 1. When it's highlighted on the name of the list, push the button Clear and enter. Don't hit delete. Push Clear and enter, and that'll clear out all the data underneath list 1. Okay, now you want to put all these numbers in list 1. So you're going to push the 64.2 and cursor down, and then the 60.8 and cursor down, and you're going to do that all the way through until you get to the last number of the 64.3. Now once you do that, the next thing you're going to do is enter the Stat button again, and then next you're going to cursor right to Tests. Under Tests, you're going to look for the T interval. And then once you get to the T interval, you're going to have an option between Data or Stats. We have Data here, so you want to cursor so that it's highlighted on Data and push Enter. Stats you would do is if they gave you the sample mean and the sample standard deviation instead of giving you the actual values. So you're going to pick the Data choice, and then it's going to ask you what list your data is in. So when you look at the list that your data is in, if it says L1 and you put it in L1, then you're good to go. If it's not showing the same list that you put it in, or if it doesn't have a list, you push the second button and then the number 1 for L1, the second button, the number 2 for L2, etc. Next thing it's going to ask you is frequency. We just put each item in individually, each one time, so you don't have a frequency list. So if it has a list named after frequency, make sure that you don't have that in there, or it will mess up the data entry into the process and it will give you the wrong calculation. Okay, the next thing it's going to ask you is for the C level, the confidence level. And here we want to find an 85% confidence interval for the population mean height. So you're going to put 0.85 there for the confidence level. And then just calculate. So once it calculates that, it will give you an interval of values, and it should say 63.213. Oh, sorry, 63.231. Comma, and then 65.429. And it'll also give you X bar is equal to 64.33. So if you notice, this point estimate, 64.33, is in this interval. And in fact, if you added these two numbers and divided by 2, you would get that point estimate, because for the mean, the confidence interval is centered around the sample mean. So it's right in the middle. And if you took this higher limit of a higher number from your confidence interval and subtracted the point estimate of the mean, you would get what the error of estimation is, or your margin of error. You'll get what your margin of error is. So that's some information that's given to you there. Okay, next up, what we want to do is make sure that we take this information out of our calculator and we give it back to whoever we're doing the report for in a manner that's a sentence form using the specifics of the question. So we have our interval is 63.231 to 65.429. And then to write our sentence, we really just take the question, take off the word find, capitalize the first word after the first letter after that, and fill in with our numbers. So an 85% confidence interval for the population mean height of women is 63.2 inches to 65.4 inches. And we want to make sure that we also give our units in our sentence so that the person reading it gets exactly the information that we're trying to portray to them.